You're listening to the Team Stripes Podcast, the podcast for hockey referees. Each show, we discuss the world of officiating and find out that not everything is in black and white. Here's your host, Brandon Bourgeois.
Welcome back to the Team Stripes Podcast. You're listening to episode number 14. On this episode, we're pretty lucky. We got to talk to NHL linesman Vaughan Rody. For those of you that may not know, Vaughan is quite the NHL veteran, having worked more than 1,000 games, and has also worked a couple Heritage Classics, the NHL All-Star Game in 2016, as well as last year's China Games that the NHL held. So besides refereeing, Vaughan is also really committed to helping players improve their skating, and is actually the owner of Pro Edge Power Skating, which has multiple clinics in Washington State. So in this episode, we talk about his career, the importance of skating and how referees can improve, as well as the role of fitness, nutrition, and game preparation for referees. So we hope you enjoy the episode, and we kick it off by asking him how he got started with refereeing.
So I actually started refereeing when I was 14 years old back home in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And, I probably did it like a lot of other kids do. We did it for the extra money as I was playing hockey, and I thought, my original goal was to play in the NHL, not to referee in it. So I played until as high as level as I could, and shut it down right around 17 years old. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? So I started to really focus on refereeing. I went to a clinic, went to another clinic the following year. Seen that there was a Western Hockey League opportunity in Calgary, so I went to the officiating camp in this Western Hockey League School of Officiating. I went there and was just one of probably about 120 kids that showed up there to kind of be taught by Kerry Fraser, Dan Marawelli, Mike Civic was there as the instructors, and it really kind of worked out. I got an opportunity from there to be a part of the Western Hockey League out of Brandon, Manitoba. And I, was probably doing on average 3 or 4 games a month out of Brandon. And then the following, about 2 years after that, the Western Hockey League held an open tryout in Calgary again. Same kind of thing. You would go back to this the School of Officiating, and back then, to get hired to the National Hockey League, you needed one of the full-time jobs. There was 4 full-time linesmen and 4 full-time referees in the Western League at the time. And Lyle Seitz had been hired to the National Hockey League, so he had moved on. And there was a spot open in Seattle for a full-time official. So we went to camp and kind of had a good camp and tried out with all these kids for this one spot. And as luck would have it, Rick Dirksen, who was the vice president of the WHL, offered me the job. So I went back home to Winnipeg. I thought about it for a week. I had a pretty good job as a supervisor of site operations at the Forks Renewal Corporation. So I knew I had to kind of give up, pretty good paying job back in the day. I think I was probably making at the time probably about $37,000 to $40,000 a year, if you can imagine that, as a 21-year-old kid. And I gave that up and took a leave of absence and moved on to Seattle to kind of chase this dream.
So you're saying that was a pretty tough decision for you. I mean, did you think back then that you had a really good chance to make a career out of this? Was it a big risk for you to make that jump?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I kind of grew up in a family where my dad was a union guy, and there's not a whole bunch of change in his life. I mean, married to my mom for 54 years, and worked at a company for 36 years, and my brothers and sister, they were all in a union job, so not a lot of change. And now all of a sudden this young whippersnapper decides that he's going to give up this job of a lifetime. Really, I think I was making more money than my dad was in the day, working at the Forks, and I was going to give up this opportunity, and I was going to move to another country to pursue my dream. So I think my dad looked at me, my parents actually, like I had 2 heads. Like, well, what are you even thinking?
Right. And so kind of touching into your NHL career a little bit, I mean, how was it the first few years for you? Did you get settled in pretty good? And I guess maybe if you could progress to some later, what are some highlights for you? I know you worked in China for those games. You've worked some All-Star games.
Yeah, that was great.
Could you talk a little bit about that progression?
Yeah, for sure. I think like anything, I mean, when you kind of as a young referee, you move up the ladder. I think that's the one thing that I've actually had to deal with the most is you move up the ladder. When I was in the Manitoba Major Junior League, I conquered that league, and then I went to Junior A and I conquered that, and I went to the Western Hockey League, and you conquer that league. Now you get, now you kind of moving up the ladder, and it becomes kind of a it's almost like a pyramid. You get to the top, it's a narrow spot, and when you kind of get to the National Hockey League, you think you're going to have all this success. I kind of worked the finals in every league that I worked on and worked in, and no different. I thought I was going to come to the NHL and just step in and work final after final after final, and that's the one thing that's really eluded me is playoff success. I think in the National Hockey League. I mean, I think it's one thing to be a part of this group and to be a 19-year employee and serve the game, I think is great. But at the end of the day, I'm not really satisfied because, I don't have that Stanley Cup final. I don't have that culmination of being able to conquer this league. I'm still hopeful and I'm still going to work at it. But, I think that's the one disappointment. If I was to have one career disappointment, that would be it right now. I'm going to, but I'm not really a quitter. It's not really in my DNA. So I'm going to go back and work as hard as I can to make sure I eliminate that one little miscue on my career. As far as working hockey and highlights of my National Hockey League career, I think the highlight you mentioned China, that was great. That was fantastic. The All-Star game was something that I'll never forget. Working for this league, they take such great care of you and your family. I mean, you're allowed to invite and bring friends and family along, and how lucky you are to work in this league. But when they get a chance to actually see what the NHL does and how they take care of you, when they're actually able to kind of live it and be a part of it, it's a pretty amazing thing. And I think that's that's an exciting kind of part of being part of this job is when other people get to see how fortunate you are and they get to live a little bit of the NHL life. It's pretty special.
Yeah. And you recently, I guess, crossed the 1,000 game plateau in the National Hockey League. Could you talk about maybe the experience of that and kind of looking back and seeing, how 1,000 games have passed by pretty fast?
Yeah, it's been 19 years now, and I've seen a lot of changes in this league. You kind of live through them. The league kind of grows, and you see changes in it for sure. Really, at the end of the day, I actually take a lot of pride in that accomplishment because, in any sport and in any profession, I think the one thing you strive for is longevity. When you have longevity, you have acceptance, and I think that's one of the great parts of this 1,000 game plateau is. Or this mark is that these people have thought and they've entrusted the safety of the game to me for 19 years, and I haven't let them down. I haven't let the game down, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that you putting in the work and having the occasional break and doing whatever you can to make your career successful. When you stuck around 19 years, it proves that you belong, and it wasn't an easy journey for sure.
Right. And so I kind of wanted to transition now a little bit because obviously this is a podcast focused on helping referees develop, and one thing that you certainly are knowledgeable about, and if you last for 19 years in the National Hockey League, certainly your skating ability would be something notable that you would be able to teach about. So I'm wondering for you, what makes a great skater, and what are some of the fundamental skills that you look to develop, especially in your camps that you run as well?
Yeah, I think, what makes a great skater, you're absolutely right. If you can't skate in this league, you definitely can't play, and you definitely can't officiate. I mean, the game has changed so much now over the years that really skating is just such a huge asset for you. And it's noticeable when a guy can't turn to his right or turn to his left or stop with both feet to transition. It's very noticeable, and I don't think you'll ever get to the league if if you have deficiencies. So, I think the most important thing is to admit that there's things that you do better than there's things I'm more comfortable with doing on the ice than I'm not. So it's important to me to be able to practice those things that I'm not, that comfortable with. I have to realize that I have deficiencies in skating. And when I'm out there working, if I have 7 minutes or 9 minutes or 11 minutes or however many minutes before the game is a warm-up, I've got to make sure that I'm working on my left turns, and I got to make sure I'm stopping to my left, because even at this level, and I think I'm an okay skater, even at this level, I have some deficiencies. So I think it's important, as any young official would, you've got to realize, there's things you do well. You also got to be honest with yourself too, and realize that there's things that you maybe don't do that well that you need to correct.
Yeah. And like when you look back at when you started 19 years ago and you looked at today, I mean, can you look at the difference between like the emphasis that's put on skating for referees nowadays? Is that something that's pretty apparent to you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have always had in this business. I mean, we've got great athletes. Randy Mitten was a great athlete. Dan Marawelli, a great athlete. Guys like that, just great athletes and great mentors. Wayne Bonney, and then it kind of went down the line. Jay Shares was a great athlete. Mike Civic, great athlete. Brian Murphy. I don't think there's anybody in better shape than Murph. And I mean, we just have guys that just kind of carry the torch from one section to the other. And not only fitness, but or not only skating, but fitness too. But we're just kind of touching back on the skating aspect of it. This game now is changed so much, and it's so darn fast that you really have to have an understanding of how to be efficient, how to be an efficient skater. Everyone's got a little bit of speed, but, the rink's only so long. So you have to understand that your first two strides out of the blocks have to be important to get up to full speed. And that comes with strength of your body and knowing your body and working it a certain way. So, skating is such a vital, important part of playing this game. And you really have to work at it. It's something that takes work. And it's an ongoing struggle for me. I mean, we started a little business about 10 years ago where we teach power skating here in Seattle. We have a little company that we started called Pro Edge Power Skating, and we try to teach young little hockey players that you don't have to be the greatest player, but if you're a great skater and if you do things right every shift and you work hard, you'll be rewarded. And I don't think it's any different than a young referee starting out. Everybody works games in buildings that you don't think anyone's watching at. Everyone works games in St. Malo, Manitoba, and I don't mean any disrespect to St. Malo, but it's a small little hamlet in Manitoba, and you have to realize that those games are just as important as working in Brandon, Manitoba. Because you never know who's going to be in the building to watch. And the game deserves you to be great. It's a great game, and it deserves you to be great that night. So you have to put the effort in, no matter where you are. You have to skate like people are watching you. You have to work like people are watching you, no matter what building you're working in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Vaughan. And I'm just curious. You see obviously a lot of players that are you help develop a lot of players in their skating. You obviously have great experience as a referee in skating. To you, is there a difference between skating as a referee and skating as a player? I mean, I know you mentioned that as a referee, you're going the full 60 minutes on the ice without a break. I mean, is there a difference there?
No, I don't think there is, actually. I think they actually, the lines are, it's kind of a muddled line, and a great efficient skater is a great efficient skater. Connor McDavid is a great skater, and there's things he can do on the ice that it's absolutely incredible. Patrick Marleau is another guy that can absolutely fly. Phil Kessel, and guys like that can really just are blessed with speed. They can really motor, and I don't really think the game for a referee or a player is any different. I mean, I think this game is played east and west and north and south, and it's no different than if you're an NHL official or an NHL player or an up and coming hockey player, an up and coming hockey official. You need to work at that skill, and you need to find out what you do that is great, and what you do is not so great, and you need to practice. I mean, as a referee, we have 7 minutes, 9 minutes, 11 minutes before every game, on the ice, There's things you can do, crossovers, transition turns. You don't have to just monotonously get on the ice and turn left every day like these players do. You can get on and use those skill sets to practice the things that you need to do. I watched Dan O'Rourke when he's on the ice warming up, and I think what a great example for a young official to be able to watch. There's a guy who's in great shape, great fitness guy, and he's probably a better skater if you were to ask him now as a referee than he was as a player. And it's important to make sure that everybody realizes that when you watch him skate, before a game, he does 3 or 4 things to warm up. He's transitioning forward and backwards. He's doing his crossovers. He's doing C cuts. He's doing things to make him better for the game because the game deserves it.
Yeah, and I guess that's something that we don't, see it a lot of now because, you take for granted, I guess, that, the players on these NHL teams that you'd be reffing have practice, however many times a week, but as referees and linesmen, you might not necessarily have that opportunity. So you're talking about that 7-8 minutes before a game. Is that really like a science now too, to really work in those good habits and routines and really make sure that you're developing in those few minutes before each game?
Yeah, I think it's important. You're right. We don't get a lot of opportunities as a referee. There's a couple of camps here and there, but there's not a whole bunch of them. So I think it's vitally important when you do get some time to get out and practice those things that need practicing and use that time accordingly. There's only you only can look at the game sheet, for so long, talk to the timekeeper, talk to the coach for so long. You still have time. If you're doing 70 games, 70 games a year, and you got an extra 10 minutes, those are times that can be used to your full advantage. I think you also have to realize that, there's only a certain number of jobs for referees. There's only a certain number of jobs for linesmen. It's such a competition, and you are responsible for the things that you can control. We can't control if they're going to go out and they're not going to adhere to the rules. They're going to behave however they're going to behave, and that's out of your control. But as a referee, you control your fitness, you control your skating, you control what you put into your body. You're in complete charge, and if you fail to enhance your skills, well, you know what, that's on you.
Yeah, and you talk about fitness, and I think that certainly you have a unique experience of being a longtime NHL linesman that I know you've seen some injuries that have been difficult for you, and I'm sure there's lots of referees out there that have worked lots of games in the season and they know that you encounter injuries and need to kind of battle through. What sort of advice would you have for referees out there that have to deal with injuries, that have to make improving and getting better a part of their regiment?
Yeah, I think it's important. You have to kind of listen to your body, Brandon. Like when you are, when you understand when you have a nick and a bruise, and I think it's different in the NHL because this is our job. I remember being in the Western Hockey League, and I was an inspector at Boeing, and I had to put in 8 hours at Boeing and work, and then I had to jump in my car and drive to Portland for 3 hours, and then do a game, and then jump back in my car and drive back home. So you really had no time to be injured. You just had to kind of battle through it. And I think those are really difficult times for young women and young men who are trying to officiate. You have other things going on in your career, so I think then it becomes a time to listen to your body. When you're tired, go rest. Maybe you want to shut it down early for a couple of days in a row. You want to go home and ice your body and listen to your body. You want to stretch a little bit more. You want to take care of yourself because you don't have that luxury throughout the day. In our business, yes, we have injuries, and the injuries are bad, and sometimes they're career threatening. I've had a few myself. I had a back injury that was pretty significant. I'm certainly struggling with a shoulder injury right now that it's been the most difficult thing ever. And I think that you have to kind of take care of yourself. You have to ice your body. You have to listen to your body, and you have to feed it properly too. It's a full-time job. Being an official, it's no different than being a player. The game deserves you to be great, and no matter what level you're in, you kind of have to match the athleticism of the players. As a young official, and even as one in the National Hockey League as well, it's even more so important.
Yeah, and just kind of building off that a little bit, you're talking about making sure you have good habits and taking care of your body. And certainly, being on the ice is not, or refereeing is not just doing the 60 minutes and being done. There's pre-game routines, post-game routines. Is there any advice you might be able to offer to referees out there that maybe don't have a pre-game routine now, or are looking to improve to really get their body prepared before and after the game?
Yeah, it's funny. I have a young son who plays, and like I said, we teach these young kids all the time. And some of our kids in our camp are 6, 7, 8, 9, 11 years old. I tell them all the time, it's time to kind of be responsible for your own actions and be accountable and behave like a professional. Whether you're eating or whatever, it's pretty easy to grab a bag of chips as a snack, but really at the end of the day, you're not doing yourself any service. You're not helping yourself at all. So there's actually, when you really kind of step right down and back away and think about it, it's important to realize that everything you do off the ice helps what you do on the ice, whether you're eating, you're feeding your body, all that stuff transfers and allows you to be successful on the ice. And if you're successful off the ice, I have a real sneaky suspicion that, then you're successful in life and you'll be successful on the ice as well.
Yeah. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on, proper diet. I mean, we were talking to a former NHL referee last week who said back in the day, everybody was a steak and potato guy. There wasn't as much emphasis on proper nutrition. But I'm wondering if you could maybe offer some thoughts on, what kind of meals are you having before games? Is it pretty regimented for you? Is there a routine there?
Yeah, I'm, I think I stick to my diet pretty close. I come from a family where, my dad was a big guy, 400 and some pounds, and my mom was a bigger lady. I mean, we were right kind of, they're meat and potatoes right from the farm kind of people. And my family, I mean, it's, if I eat a cheeseburger, I might as well tape it right to my rear end because that's where it's going. So over the years, though, I know that I've kind of understood my body and how this DNA thing works. And I realize that there's things I can't do. And we're not getting any younger anymore. Don't let the NHL know this, but I'm 49 years old. I still got 4 or 5 more years I want to fool these guys for. So it doesn't happen if you don't take this serious. So I know that I can't. I know that I can't sit down at that table and eat a pizza when my kids are. I want to kick them in the rear end because they're having 2 pieces right in front of dad, and I just want to lick the crumbs off the plate. But it doesn't work that way because I know that that's not a benefit to me, and I know that I'm going to have to put in another 10 or 12 miles on the bike the next day. So it just becomes lifestyle management. I realize that I have to make healthy choices, and I try to make healthy choices as much as possible because, like I say, I mean, I think diet is 80% of working out. I really think no matter how hard you train or no matter how much you train, if you're not eating properly and if you're not kind of giving your body a chance to be successful, no matter how hard you work, it'll never be successful.
Yeah. No, and it's funny you talk about how you're getting up there in age, and the thing I always hear now is the NHL just keeps getting younger and younger, and I'm sure you see that firsthand.
Yeah, I mean these kids come into this league and they're a lot of them you never really heard of 18 and 19-year-old kids playing in this league before. It was always like 22, 23 they would come in, they'd have 4 years and then they'd be kind of shuffled out. Well, now these young kids, they're so talented and they're training. I mean, their trainings. Well, we're no different. Pro Edge, our camp, we're training, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids. Well, that didn't really happen back in the day. And now these are one sport kids. They're playing, they're focused. They come ready, and they're 18 years old. They're hungry and they're ready. 19 years old, they're ready to take a job, and they're so darn skilled that it's hard to kind of keep them away from the National Hockey League. And it's no different than our league as officials. I see young guys. I do a lot of development and skating and helping out at the Western Hockey League camp. And I go to the Western Hockey League camp. We have kids that are coming in that that are engineers and are lawyers and are police officers and they have all these great jobs, and not only are they doing great in school or they're in the workforce working, they're actually taking care of their bodies. It's their fitness and their ability to be professional at that young age is fantastic. I remember sitting in my camp, when I was young and just kind of going through the process of this, and you'd go around the room and introduce yourself, and guys were lucky to have a job back then, so it's times have changed and society has kind of changed, and this career's changed. The NHL, they want people that can handle, they're going to give you a lot of money to work in this league.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay you a lot of money throughout the years to work in this league. They don't just want to turn the keys of the car over to somebody who, is happy getting up in the morning at 8 o'clock and thrilled about getting out of bed. That's not how it works. You want this job, you have to be a professional on the ice, and you best be a professional off the ice too.
Yeah, and I think certainly that's a great incentive the league's offering. I mean, I obviously don't know it as well as you do, but I mean, we hear a lot that guys, once they get in, they can make really good careers out of it, being in the league for 20, 25, I'm sure even longer for their careers. So I think it's certainly a good thing the league has done. But I wanted to jump on just before we let you go. You obviously run your power skating programs, and I'm assuming you obviously work predominantly with players. But for referees out there that might not have that luxury, I mean, what are certain concrete skills that they can focus on? I mean, what do you tell referees out there? Is it something as simple as, keep your knees bent, keep your head up? I mean, is there some concrete things that referees should keep in the back of their minds when they're on doing their levels of games?
Well, it's funny, we talk strictly about body movement and about keeping your head up when you're skating. But, the one thing that I'm going to leave people with is, a human arm weighs between 8 and 13 pounds, and if you just imagine if you held a weight of 13 to 8 pounds of, a weight in your hand, and if you moved your body, if you just moved them across your body from side to side, it would create no momentum going forward. It would just create a lot of headache and heartache. You watch a track star, and you watch a guy or a girl who's running the 100-yard dash, and they use their arms to propel themselves in a forward motion, and they run down the track. They don't throw themselves across their body and do things like a lot of hockey, a lot of official skate, when they get on the ice and those big arm movements from side to side, they're not helping themselves. You want to use those 11 pounds, those 9 pounds, those 8 pounds. You want to use those in a way to propel yourself forward for speed. And moving them from side to side is just not accomplishing that. So, as tough as it is, I mean, I want you to kind of sit back, and the next time you see a skater, a referee skate on the ice and those big lunging arm swings from side to side, think to yourself, those each weigh 11 pounds. You got 22 pounds throwing across your body. Do you really think that that's going to make you successful going faster forward? It just obviously is not. So I would hope that common sense would prevail and people would go, wow, you know what? I want to be fast. I want to mimic, being a sprinter. Because really, at the end of the day, when you break it down, that's kind of what skating is. You're trying to get from point A to point B as fast as you can. So you're almost mimicking the sprinter. So change a little bit of your arm movements and understand how quickly then you create speed going that direction rather than throwing them across your body. That's the one thing I would touch on. The second thing I would touch on is, don't skate so fast on the ice that you overlook things. As a game, as a referee, as a linesman, we all have jobs to do. And yes, we want to get there quickly. And yes, we want to get there fast. Let's get there efficiently as well. And let's have an understanding that we don't want to bypass things. We don't want to miss anything. It's not going to help you when Stephen Walkom's at the game watching you and you got there first, but you missed 2 slashes and a high stick and a spear on the way to the the stoppage of play. So keep your head up and have a little bit of situational awareness when you're skating. Keep your head up and make sure your head's on a swivel. Get there fast, get there efficient, but make sure you get there and you've witnessed the infractions along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's. I think you said it best, and there's not much I could add on to that. But no, I just wanted to thank you for your time and helping out, and certainly best of luck with your camps that you're conducting, and best of luck with your season. And I guess if there's any parting advice you'd want to say to some young referees out there before we let you go, you're more than welcome to add that on as well.
Yeah, I think officiating is it's funny, I don't think it's on your time. Everybody thinks they're ready. Everyone thinks they're ready to be hired. It was no different than me. I thought I was ready 2 years, maybe 3 years before I got hired. But I tell every young official, and I'd like to tell you guys as well, whoever's out there listening, and I like to kind of just sum it up by having the 3 Ps. Be persistent, be patient, and persevere. And if you had those 3 Ps, and if you implement them in your daily regimen, and if you realize that those three things have to be accomplished, you're going to get hired. You're going to advance into your career. You're going to have success, not when you're ready, but when your bosses think you're ready. So apply and work hard to put those 3 Ps into your toolbox and carry them from game to game, because they're vitally important for the success that you wish to have in your officiating career.